Good afternoon, everyone. Jack Dallas here. It is July 27th, yet another hot afternoon if you are on the East Coast of the United States. Just thought I would do a video on the recent WikiLeaks, release of the Hillary Clinton emails, or I guess what we're finding out to be is now just a portion of what they have on the subject. I'm going to try not to do a sort of typical roundup of the information on here, although I will relay this Zero Hedge article right here, which I thought was good just because it had a pretty well-defined and clear summary of the information, the emails, and if this is a subject that you need to be kind of caught up on, I would highly recommend this article just because of how organized it is. If you go down, they talk about, plotting against Bernie Sanders. You got all the anti-Bernie stuff here. You got the Debbie Schultz stuff. You've got the Chuck Todd stuff. You've got the Politico stuff. I guess I want to kind of just use this as an opportunity to discuss my feelings on, the larger topic, which is the election and what this kind of says about media coverage and things like that. I think it's really tough, guys. On the one hand, if you're a Bernie supporter, and although I've been, pretty critical of Bernie, I definitely still sympathize with the Bernie supporters because I kind of understand that for the vast majority of them, I think their heart is in the right place. I think that they want to help people who are not, not as able to access the things that other people in America have. They want the people that are kind of at the bottom of society, whether economically or just in terms of their opportunities, they want them to have a chance to move up and perhaps be a part of, the middle class or the upper class and sort of live the American dream that we've all kind of been promised. And I understand that, and that's why I don't really want to come out, swinging against these people because I hope that one day we can all kind of unite on a sort of some sort of plan for the future here. But for the Bernie supporters, this one has to hurt. This is pretty much confirmation of what you all probably suspected or maybe already knew about, that there was of course rigging going on to keep the whole Bernie movement down. And I think a lot of that started with simply downplaying how good his success might have been at the time. I'm sure we all saw simple articles about how the size of Bernie rallies was often downplayed, or the effect that he was having on the nation and Democratic voters was downplayed to a large extent. And simultaneously, the anti-Hillary sentiment, not just from the Republicans, which is obvious, but from Democrats, registered voters who would ordinarily be sort of a shoo-in to vote left, were very upset with Hillary, and I think this was downplayed at the same time that the Sanders momentum and the Sanders movement was downplayed. The introduction of the idea that Russia was behind this, which I guess seems to be actually gaining some traction, at first it seems like kind of a distraction tactic, sort of a way to say, oh, those crazy Russians on the one hand, look at them meddling in our affairs yet again. And at the same time, it's also a way to distract, but it also kind of makes people think, is this true? Is this coming from a reputable source? It's really just a distraction tactic. But if the information is solid, I think the key takeaway for me is I almost don't really care where it comes from. I think any opportunity to learn more truth about how the system is set up and rigged to design our thoughts and our eventual opinions, which furthermore shapes our actions. It's good for us to learn about how that's being done, regardless of who is revealing the information to us. I'm not really one of these people in the alt media that's like a big Russia or Putin supporter. I've certainly, I guess, been more favorable towards Russia's stance on the Syria crisis than I have of America's, but again, that's a tough comparison to make. But I'm certainly not like a Putin apologist, like I feel that many in the alt media have become, which I'm sort of sad to see. I'm just sort of making a point that I'm more concerned, especially being that this is an election year, with the fact that information is being released about the candidate who I feel and who I have felt for the longest time is most likely to win. I just want the information, and I just want to know if it's true. That's really all I care about. I don't care where it comes from. So that being said, a lot of things in here. Now, the head of the DNC, and really furthermore for comparison, if the head of either party were to resign on the day of the beginning of their convention, I think this is pretty much like just about as bad as it could get. I mean, it's definitely not like the ship is sinking, but it's a big deal. It's pretty bad. I went to go and mention this in my last article that I did earlier this week, guys. And what's interesting is I was just looking for a quick link to use as sort of my headliner here, like to just put on the screen as I was starting the video. And one of the things I thought that was interesting was I just figured, hey, I'll go to some left-wing outlet like NBC or CNN or New York Times, and I'll just grab a quick article just for the sake of headlining my story. And I couldn't find one. I actually had to go, out and kind of look around, and I wasn't even happy with the articles I was seeing. And so it kind of shows that not only is there complicity coming directly from the Clinton campaign, but obviously complicity in how it's covered. The story is being glossed over, and I find it a little bit distressing that you have to kind of go to like out and out right-wing sources like Fox News to even witness coverage of this, which I think is bad because that means that we're getting coverage of an important event from a news source which is in and of itself biased and bought, and everybody knows this to be the case. And I think just because they're anti-Hillary, that doesn't necessarily, well, it definitely doesn't mean that we should just take their word for it. So I don't like to have to go to places like Breitbart just to get information because nobody else is covering the story. I was kind of upset by that. That being said, this kind of transitions to my next point. Guys, as I just mentioned, and I'm kind of specifically speaking to my left-wing audience, if that exists, as I just mentioned, there are plenty of sources out there like Fox, etc., who are biased to the Republicans, biased to the right. But my question to you guys is, when are you going to start questioning your own side? Because this is now like the smoking gun of smoking guns when it comes to evidence of media collusion with the liberals and the Democrats. And this needs to stop, guys, because it not only goes to show that what people have been claiming has been going on has in fact been going on, but it also goes to show that you guys need to begin questioning yourselves from within. I mean, the sources of information that you ascribe to and that you gain your information from are now directly implicated with direct evidence of, tampering with your content. That's effectively what it is. And I'm just wondering, how many of you, and I'm asking seriously, I want to hear from you, how many of you are going to question, a New York Times the next time you go to their website or buy a newspaper? How many of you are going to question, CNN, NBC, or especially, Politico, people that were directly named in this? How many of you are questioning your own committee because, obviously they were the other half of this whole controversy? And, of course, how many of you, if you were Hillary supporters, are questioning your candidate? And how many of you are questioning yourselves because maybe the source of where you got your information or how you developed your opinion has now been either at least brought into question or just completely destroyed? So I kind of want to know where you guys are coming from on that. I'm not really trying to say that in an accusatory way, but if anybody out there feels that there's no reason to examine this, or they want to blame it on the Russians, or they want to call this a bunch of Fox News trash, I mean, man, guys, how much information has to, be brought right in front of your face before you are willing to look at that? So I would say the only people I have a harsh sentiment towards right now are anybody on the left who is still refusing to kind of question their source of information. Now, I'm 100% sure that this happens on the other side as well, but on the one hand, again, we're trying to talk about this specific campaign here, and on the other hand, we also have to remember that the media is basically, in terms of the larger media, the media that's consumed by the vast majority of people is 90% left. So again, by addressing this topic, we're addressing, the vast majority of what's going on here. I mean, you pretty much only have Fox when it comes to the TV, and then when it comes to conservative websites, I feel like people already know them. I mean, I can't be in a debate with someone who happens to be on the left, and I debate plenty of conservatives too, guys. In fact, I might even at this time be debating more conservatives than liberals, which is interesting. But I can't just go to a conservative and try to bring up something like maybe Breitbart, or I can't go to a liberal and try to bring up an article from Breitbart, because they're immediately going to say, this isn't credible information. It's coming from this source that everybody knows has an agenda. And they would be correct. But again, if you go down the line, ABC, NBC, CNN, New York Times, LA Times, Politico, etc., everybody, I mean, even the more, youth-oriented outlets, whether it's Vice, whether it's BuzzFeed, whether it's Salon, Huffington Post, everybody knows what side they're on. And, I just question, can these people begin to examine their own side? It's a really important conversation that needs to take place. That being said, I want to go back to the point that I made about how I was disappointed that some of the people in the alt media are kind of pro-Trump, because I think you have to remember that some of the topics that those very people were saying, formulated their opinions, are not being addressed by the Trump campaign. So specifically, I'm talking about things like the Federal Reserve. Donald Trump hasn't come out and said he's going to end that. I think foreign policy under him might actually be more peaceful than under Hillary, but he's certainly not going to, I would say, demilitarize us. And a lot of the very same people would be at the top in terms of Department of Defense and probably the cabinet as well. A lot of people on the left might be saying, well, hang on a second, how could you possibly be saying it would be more peaceful? Well, I understand that every time you log onto your computer or turn on your TV or pick up a newspaper, you see like an angry screenshot of Trump, and he's pointing in the air, and he's got his, they've photoshopped his eyes to make them look all bright, and they've photoshopped his skin to make him look kind of like fiery, like the devil. But I'm looking at actual, voting records and actions, and I see Hillary just voting in lockstep with every single war and defense spending bill that she's had a chance to participate in, despite her rhetoric about being somehow a peace candidate. That's complete garbage. I'm looking at what she supported during the time that her husband was president, and I'm looking at the fact that she's a huge supporter of Israel, and I'm just saying, this is a really, really bad combination. And to say that Trump would do more damage to our foreign policy than her just because of some photoshopped images on NBC News, I mean, that would just be taking sort of a random guess, whereas with Hillary, we know from the voting record, we know from the rhetoric, we know from the alliances where she's going to be going. And you can guarantee our military will be in more countries if she's elected. So, while on the one hand, people might be wondering, why not support Trump? Like I said, the Federal Reserve thing, I don't necessarily think he's going to do anything when it comes to peace. Most importantly, I just don't really believe in the idea of governance from the top. I believe in self-governance and developing systems to make that more, I guess what I would say, not only functional, but I guess I would say just more motivating in terms of people wanting to be self-starters and developing solutions to problems on their own. That's kind of another conversation that I've had before, but it's sort of where I want to leave on this story. So I didn't just want to do a roundup of what happened in the emails. I kind of just wanted to use this as an opportunity to talk about how I'm feeling at this point, and the other point, just to kind of see if some people on the left can maybe start to examine themselves and see that there's a lot of issues within their party and their chosen media outlets that need to be taken care of. So once again, we'll talk soon, guys.